They mocked the poor obese girl until the mountain man said, "Do not touch my girl." The auction block in Dusty Gulch's town square had seen many transactions over the years: livestock, land, mining claims, even the occasional foreclosure sale. But on this scorching August afternoon in 1879, it was hosting something that made even hardened frontiersmen shift uncomfortably: a debt auction for 18-year-old Eliza Brennan. Eliza stood on the wooden platform, her substantial 400-pound frame wrapped in a threadbare dress that had been mended so many times the original fabric was barely visible. Her round face was flushed not just from the heat, but from the crushing humiliation of being displayed like property while the entire town gathered to watch. Her father had died 6 months ago, leaving debts she couldn't pay, and the bank had decided to recoup its losses by auctioning her labor contract, essentially selling her into indentured servitude for 5 years. "Now, folks," the auctioneer called out with forced enthusiasm, "here we have Miss Eliza Brennan. 5 years of labor to whoever will assume her father's debt of $300. She can cook, clean, and do basic farm work. Starting bid is $300. The crowd's reaction was immediate and cruel. "$300 for that?" someone shouted. "You'd have to pay me $300 to take her." "She'd eat $300 worth of food in a month," another voice added, sparking waves of laughter. "I wouldn't pay $3 for her, let alone $300. Eliza kept her eyes down, tears streaming silently down her cheeks as the mockery continued. She'd lived her entire life in Dusty Gulch, and these were people she'd known since childhood: neighbors, shopkeepers, people her father had considered friends. Now they were competing to see who could say the cruelest thing about her size, her appearance, her supposed worthlessness. The auctioneer, clearly uncomfortable with the whole proceedings, tried again. "Come now, someone must need help around their property. The girl's strong and capable. Do I hear $300? I'll give you $50, a saloon owner called out. "She can work my kitchen. Figure she'll eat half of what she cooks, but it's still cheaper than hiring a real cook." More laughter. Eliza's shoulders shook with suppressed sobs. The auctioneer was about to accept the insulting offer when a voice rang out from the back of the crowd, clear and commanding: $500, gold. The crowd fell silent and turned as one to see who had spoken. A young man was walking toward the platform, and even in a town full of rough frontiersmen, he stood out. Jax Holloway was perhaps 25 years old, standing 6'5", with the kind of powerfully muscular build that came from years of hard ranch work. His shoulders were broad, his arms thick with strength, and even through his simple work clothes you could see the defined musculature of his chest and the distinctive six-pack of abdominal muscles. He had sun-darkened skin, dark hair that touched his collar, and intense gray eyes that were currently fixed on Eliza with an expression that was impossible to read. Jax was known in the territory as a successful young rancher who had built his operation from nothing through sheer hard work and business acumen. He lived alone on his ranch in the high desert canyons about 20 miles from town and came to Dusty Gulch only when absolutely necessary. He was respected, but also somewhat feared. There were stories about his time as a cavalry scout, about fights he'd won, about men who'd made the mistake of crossing him and regretted it. "Did you say 500? The auctioneer asked, clearly shocked. "I did," Jax confirmed, mounting the platform steps. He pulled a leather pouch from his vest and counted out gold coins directly into the auctioneer's trembling hands. $500 in gold. The debt is paid, and Miss Brennan's contract belongs to me now. The crowd murmured with speculation and surprise. Why would Jax Holloway pay nearly twice what was owed for a girl everyone considered worthless? What did he want with her? Jax turned to face Eliza for the first time, and his expression softened slightly. Miss Brennan, my name is Jax Holloway. I've just paid off your father's debt, which means you're free to go. You can stay in town if you prefer, or you can come work at my ranch. Either way, the debt is settled, and you're not obligated to anyone. What's your choice? Eliza looked up at this imposing stranger who had just spent a fortune to free her from debt, who was speaking to her with respect rather than mockery, who was actually giving her a choice. I don't understand. Why would you do this? Because nobody should be sold like property, Jax said simply, and because watching that auction made me sick. Now, are you coming with me or staying here? Eliza looked at the crowd, at faces that showed nothing but contempt and amusement at her expense. She thought about staying in Dusty Gulch, where she'd been mocked and belittled her entire life. Then she looked back at Jax, who was waiting patiently for her answer. I'll come with you, she said quietly. Jax nodded and turned to address the crowd one final time. Eliza Brennan is under my protection now. Anyone who has something to say about that can say it to me directly. Anyone who tries to mock her or harm her will answer to me personally. Are we clear? The threat in his voice was unmistakable, and no one challenged it. Jax helped Eliza down from the platform, his strong hands steadying her with surprising gentleness, and led her to his wagon. As they prepared to leave Dusty Gulch, someone in the crowd made the mistake of calling out one more cruel comment. Hey, Holloway, what are you planning to do with that fat cow? Use her to pull your plow? Jax stopped the wagon and turned to locate the speaker, a drunk cowhand named Pete Morrison. Jax climbed down from the wagon, walked directly to Pete, and with one powerful hand lifted the man clear off his feet by his shirt front. Do not touch my girl, Jax said, his voice deadly quiet. Do not speak to her. Do not speak about her. Do not even look at her. Because if I hear that you or anyone else has said one more cruel word about Eliza, I will come back here and we will have a conversation you won't enjoy. Do you understand me? Pete nodded frantically, his face going white with terror. Jax dropped him and returned to the wagon, and they left Dusty Gulch in absolute silence. The journey to Jax's ranch took most of the day. They traveled through increasingly rugged terrain, climbing into high desert canyons that were starkly beautiful in their harshness. Jax didn't talk much, but what he did say was considerate, pointing out landmarks, warning about difficult sections of trail, making sure Eliza was as comfortable as possible. Finally, as the sun was setting, they arrived at Jax's ranch. It was more substantial than Eliza had expected, a solid stone and timber house built into the canyon wall with a barn, corrals, and outbuildings that spoke of prosperity and careful planning. The setting was isolated but spectacular, with towering red rock formations on all sides. Welcome home, Jax said, helping Eliza down from the wagon. The house has 2 bedrooms. The larger one is yours. I sleep in the smaller one. There's a lock on your door if you want to use it. You should use it at least until you're comfortable here. Inside, The house was surprisingly well appointed for a bachelor's dwelling, clean, organized, with handmade furniture and actual glass windows. The bedroom Jax had designated as Eliza's was spacious and comfortable, with a real bed, a dresser, and a washstand. "I need you to understand something," Jack said, as Eliza looked around in amazement. "I paid that $500 to free you, not to buy you. You're not my property or my servant. You're a person who needed help, and I had the means to provide it. If you want to work around the ranch, I'd appreciate the help, and I'll pay you fair wages. But if you'd rather just rest and figure out what you want to do with your life, that's fine too. This is about giving you choices, Eliza. Real choices. Understood?" "Why?" Eliza asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since the auction. "Why would you do all this for me? You don't even know me." Jax was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as if he was deciding how much to share. "I had a sister," he finally said. "Her name was Hannah. She was built like you. Heavy set, people called it, and people treated her exactly the way that crowd treated you today. Mocked her, told her she was worthless, made her believe she was nothing but a burden. When she was 17, He paused, clearly struggling with painful memories. She took her own life. Couldn't bear the constant cruelty anymore. His gray eyes fixed on Eliza with fierce intensity. "I was away on a cattle drive when it happened. Didn't even know how bad things had gotten for her. By the time I got back, she'd been dead for 2 weeks. I swore then that if I ever had the chance to help someone in a similar situation, I would. So when I rode into Dusty Gulch today and heard about that auction, heard the way people were talking about you, I saw Hannah standing on that platform, and I couldn't let history repeat itself. That's why I helped you, Eliza. That's the whole reason." Eliza felt tears streaming down her face. Not tears of shame this time, but tears of understanding and gratitude. "I'm sorry about Hannah, and thank you. Thank you for seeing me as worth saving." "You are worth saving," Jack said firmly. "More than that, you're worth valuing, and I'm hoping you'll give me the chance to prove that to you." Over the following weeks, Eliza discovered a new kind of life. Jax treated her with consistent respect and kindness, never commenting on her size, never making her feel inadequate or ashamed. He taught her ranch skills, how to handle horses, how to maintain equipment, how to read the land and weather. He gave her books from his surprisingly extensive library and actually listened when she shared her thoughts. In return, Eliza began helping around the ranch, not because she felt obligated, but because she genuinely wanted to contribute. She discovered she had a natural talent for organization, transforming Jax's somewhat chaotic record-keeping into a clear system. She also proved to have unexpected medical skills. When Jax cut his hand badly on a broken fence, she cleaned and stitched the wound with steady competence that surprised both of them. "Where did you learn to do that?" Jax asked, watching her work. "My mother," Eliza explained. "Before she died, she was the closest thing Dusty Gulch had to a doctor. She taught me everything she knew about treating injuries and illnesses. I'd forgotten most of it, or thought I had, but it came back when I needed it." "You're good at it," Jack said. "Really good. You could be a healer, Eliza, a real one. People would pay well for someone with those skills." "People wouldn't want someone like me treating them," Eliza said bitterly. "They'd be too busy mocking my size to trust my abilities." "Then they'd be fools," Jack said bluntly. "Your size has nothing to do with your skills or your worth, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve your help. As the months passed, something shifted between them. The employer-employee relationship evolved into genuine friendship, and then, gradually, into something deeper. Eliza found herself falling in love with Jax. His strength, his unexpected gentleness, his ability to see her as a complete person rather than just a body to be judged. Jax found himself falling in love with Eliza's intelligence, her resilience, her capacity to remain kind despite years of cruelty. And yes, even the physical presence that others mocked, but that he found substantial and real in a way that appealed to him. Their happiness was interrupted when Sheriff Brody and Mrs. Gable, the self-appointed moral guardian of Dusty Gulch, arrived at the ranch one morning, clearly on a mission. "Mr. Holloway," Mrs. Gable announced with righteous indignation, "we're here about the Brennan girl. It's come to our attention that you're keeping her here, alone, without proper chaperonage or marriage. This is scandalous. It's living in sin. The girl must return to town where she can be properly supervised." "Eliza is an adult who makes her own choices," Jack said coldly. "She's free to stay or leave as she pleases, and she's here as an employee, nothing more." "Employee?" Mrs. Gable scoffed. "Everyone knows what employee means when a young woman lives alone with a man. The girl's reputation is ruined. She must return to town immediately." "My reputation was already ruined," Eliza said, stepping onto the porch to stand beside Jack's. "The town made sure of that long before I came here. At least here I'm treated with respect. At least here someone sees me as more than just a fat girl to mock. I'm not going back." "You don't have a choice," Sheriff Brody said uncomfortably. "Mrs. Gable has raised concerns about your welfare. As an officer of the law, I have to—" "You have to do nothing," Jax interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerous. He stepped forward, his imposing frame making even the sheriff take an involuntary step back. "Eliza is an adult living on private property with my permission. She's committed no crime, and neither have I. You have no legal authority here, so I suggest you leave now." "This is outrageous," Mrs. Gable sputtered. "Sheriff, arrest this man for—" "Do not touch my girl," Jack said, the same words he'd used in Dusty Gulch, but with even more intensity. "Do not threaten her. Do not try to take her. Do not speak about her like she's property to be retrieved. Eliza stays here because she chooses to, and anyone who tries to force her to leave will have to go through me. Are we clear?" The sheriff looked between Jax's imposing presence and Mrs. Gable's righteous fury, clearly calculating whether this was a fight worth having. He apparently decided it wasn't. "Mrs. Gable, I think we should go. Mr. Holloway is right. We have no legal grounds to force Miss Brennan to leave if she doesn't want to." "But the scandal, the impropriety," Mrs. Gable protested. "Then they should get married," the sheriff said practically. "Problem solved. Mr. Holloway, Miss Brennan, I suggest you consider making this arrangement legal and proper. It would save everyone a lot of trouble." After they left, Jax and Eliza stood on the porch in silence for a long moment. Finally, Jax spoke. "He's right, you know, about getting married. Not because of what people think, I don't care about that, but because—" he took a breath. "Because I love you, Eliza. I've fallen completely in love with you. And I'd like to make this real, not just to satisfy town gossips, but because I want to spend my life with you. What do you say? Will you marry me?" Eliza felt her heart soar. "I love you too. I've been afraid to say it because I couldn't believe someone like you could love someone like me. But yes, Jax, yes, I'll marry you. They married a week later, with the circuit preacher performing the ceremony and two of Jax's ranch hands as witnesses. When Jax slipped the ring onto Eliza's finger and spoke his vows with fierce conviction, she felt years of shame and worthlessness finally fall away. She was loved, she was valued, she was home. The news of their marriage spread through Dusty Gulch, prompting various reactions. Some people were genuinely happy for them. Others were scandalized, and a few made the mistake of expressing their negative opinions within Jax's hearing. One such incident occurred 3 months after their wedding, when Jax and Eliza came to town for supplies. As they walked past the saloon, Pete Morrison, the same man Jax had confronted after the auction, was drunk enough to call out, "Hey, Holloway, how's married life with that fat cow? Must be like sleeping with a barn." Jax didn't break stride. He walked directly into the saloon, grabbed Pete by the collar, and physically threw him out into the street. Then he turned to address the entire saloon. "My wife's name is Eliza Holloway. She's the smartest, kindest, strongest woman I've ever known. She's also the best thing that ever happened to me. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me, and anyone who disrespects me will regret it. Last warning, folks. Next time, I won't just throw someone into the street." After that incident, people in Dusty Gulch learned to keep their cruel comments to themselves, at least when Jax might hear them. And Eliza, for her part, discovered that she didn't care what they thought anymore. She had Jax's love and respect. She had meaningful work, using her healing skills to help ranch hands and local families, and she had a home where she was valued for who she was, rather than judged for what she looked like. Years later, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset over the Red Rock Canyons, Eliza spoke quietly. "Do you remember what you said that day at the auction? 'Do not touch my girl'? Those words changed my life, Jax. They were the first time anyone had ever claimed me as worth protecting, worth defending, worth fighting for." "You were always worth all those things," Jax said, pulling her close. "The town just couldn't see it. But I saw it from the moment you stood on that platform with your head high despite everything they were saying. You were worth $500 in gold, worth the time to teach you ranch skills, worth building a life with. Best investment I ever made." "I love you," Eliza said simply. "I love you too," Jax replied. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget how valuable you are, not despite your size, but as a complete person whose size is just one small part of who you are. You're my girl, Eliza, my wife, my partner, my everything, and anyone who doesn't like that can answer to me." As the stars emerged in the darkening sky and the desert cooled around them, Jax and Eliza held each other and counted their blessings. What had started with mockery and humiliation had become the foundation of a love story that proved worth was never determined by appearance, but always by the courage to survive, the wisdom to recognize genuine love when it was offered, and the strength to build something beautiful, despite what narrow-minded people might say. The poor, obese girl who had been mocked on an auction block had found her defender, her lover, her home, and the mountain man who said, "Do not touch my girl," had found the partner he'd never dared to hope for, someone whose worth he recognized instantly and whose love he would treasure and protect for the rest of his days.